Welcome back to part 3 of the series. In this video, we'll be continuing from where we left off in the last video. First, let me give you guys a quick recap. So after World War II, a fighter from the French Empire named Mr. Dragon develops a huge ego and sort of becomes a terrorist. Bismarck, the leader of the French, failed to cut off Mr. Dragon from the French Empire even after many nations demanded him to abandon him. Because of this, he was invaded and lost his country. Bismarck then relocated to Mexico to start a new country, but turned out people did not forget about his association with the terrorist. This in turn led many European countries to hold grudges against Bismarck, leading to a series of wars known as the Mexican Wars. After about a month of these wars, Mexico was finally put to their knees by the hands of the European nations and had no power over them whatsoever. After all this, we're here. The next few weeks after the war that we discussed in the last video would be pretty similar to before that war even started. It would mostly be peaceful, consisting of countries progressing and moving forward, except for one, the Finnish Empire. The last half of January would be marked by Finland's slow downfall due to the will of Polish expansion. Weirdly enough, Poland would go to war with Finland with the help of the Mexican Empire even after just fighting a war with them. Why, you may ask? Well, Poland knew that they were not strong enough to defeat the Finnish Empire by themselves, so they told Mexico that they could have their land back that Poland took from them in the last war. You see, that's where that leverage comes in, and Mexico, being desperate for their land back, agreed to these terms. The war would result in Finland losing much of their coastline. As promised, Poland would give the Mexicans their land back on the 21st. On the 4th of February, Poland would get hungry for land once again and arrange the same deal with Mexico, since they still could not take on the Finnish alone. This time, Poland guaranteed that Mexico could have the capital city of Finland if they helped in the war, to which they agreed. This war would be short like the last one, but this time the entire capital city would be demolished by Mexico, aka Bismarck, and all of the Finnish land would be taken by Poland and Mexico. Finland was now no more, and on top of that, Poland and Mexico were sort of friends now. These times should not only be marked by the wars caused by Mexico and Poland. There is also lots of progression and land purchases made by the nations of the world. Notable progress would be made in countries such as the German Empire, where a new city would begin construction in its puppet state in Italy. This city would not replace the capital city, but would become one of the largest cities in the world within only a few days. What's more important is that a member of Germany's Italian puppet state named Fischer will start to really get involved in this armor business and become the primary arms dealer in the world. This heavily strengthened the German economy. Because of this, Fischer would become a very well-known and highly respected individual for his arms dealing. One of the most significant developments of this time was the progress of the Albian Empire. Since we last left them, they have greatly expanded their empire across the world and have built one of the largest, if not the largest, city on the planet. However, there is a big problem the Albion faced. The leader, Hayes, was entirely alone in his massive empire and needed assistance defending all of his lands and further building it. Luckily for him, he had a lot of friends that he could recruit to help him. Starting sometime in late January, he began to recruit people into his country. Some of these friends include figures like Sea Hydrate, Wolfie, Hungry Turtle, and Nesquik. These people would invite their own friends, with Hydrate inviting Rainbow MP3 and X-Bob. Hayes' plan had went exactly how he had wanted it, and entering February, he led one of the most powerful and well-developed countries in the world. He was able to recruit even more players after the fall of the Finnish Empire on February 4th, because the residents of Finland immigrated to the Albion. These immigrants would be allowed to form a puppet state of the Albion called Hibernia, which is located in Ireland. Everything was going great, not only for the Albion, but all the way across the world in North America. A player named Pee-wee had already been on the server for a while, and in early February, he would decide to invite his own friend group to the server, such as players like Milk, Lord Billy Bob, Crazy YTZ, Bison, and more that would come later. Him and his friend group would go to California, where Pee-wee had already been living, and form the country of California on February 5th. They would continue to bring more players into their country, similar to how the Albion had also brought in a bunch of players. These players would help build a city and make a highly functioning piglin farm at their base. At the moment, most of the members of California are quite undergeared, and only some of them have a lot of gear, so we'll check on them later once they do, but for now, let's check back up on the Albion Empire. Hayes' empire was now incredibly powerful, with almost 10 players being in the country, with the majority of them being highly experienced in combat and well geared. On top of that, they have made incredible progress at building and grinding. Now Hayes, being the way he was, started to develop a bit of an ego after he now ruled one of the largest empires. A few of his members didn't like that he was now having this large ego because they were the only reason he was big and strong. Not only that, but some of the members started to think why they were letting a person that is much weaker than them tell them what to do, considering Hayes wasn't nearly as good at combat compared to his members. This situation only seemed to get worse after an incident one night when 3 members of the Albian named Hydrate, Wolfie, and the leader Hayes stumbled across some hacked items near spawn. They decided to take these items from spawn and put them in their ender chest to keep as souvenirs because most of these items did not serve much purpose other than being an antique. On the 7th, Wolfie was messing around and was fighting members of the Albian. This was a common occurrence in countries to have 1v1s for fun simply because people are bored. Anyways, Wolfie started a fight with Hayes, and he killed him, taking his armor and not giving it back, which was abnormal for these types of fights, because usually you would give it back and just do it again. Hayes got frustrated, and this became a heated issue, so I came over to try to settle this. Hayes told me that Wolfie had taken the armor set, but Wolfie told me that he had given it to Hydrate. I ordered Hydrate to share a screen over Discord and show me his ender chest where I found the hacked in items that were taken from spawn earlier, but first I need to settle this issue over Hayes' armor. So I told him I would talk about the hacked items later and continued about Hayes' armor. I would notice that Wolfie was messing around in the background of Hydrate's screen share near some barrels. I got suspicious and went to the barrels and found Hayes' armor in them. So Wolfie had completely thrown Hydrate under the bus by telling me that Hydrate had Hayes' armor when in reality Wolfie had it, and now since I had to check if Hydrate had the armor, he got caught in the process with hacked items. Hydrate, being understandably furious, told me that Wolfie and Hayes also had hacked in items in their ender chests, leading to Wolfie admitting he had hacked in items. However, Hayes would not admit he had hacked in items. This made Hydrate and Wolfie mad because it seemed like Hayes was trying to put the entire blame on them when Hayes had also contributed to the hacked in items. So Hydrate would reveal clips to me proving that Hayes had possessed hacked in items as well. Now as an owner, I'm always trying to resolve things as fairly as I can, and since all these items didn't really have much use since you would be banned immediately if you're caught using them, I simply just force solved them to remove their hacked in items. This had effectively resolved the hacked items issue, but people in the Albion were becoming increasingly frustrated with their leader after having hacked in items and trying to blame it all on their people. As a result, some people in the Albion started to conspire against the Albion Empire. However, this group didn't know what their goals were at first. They didn't know if they wanted to simply start a civil war and take over the Albion, or if they should be more peaceful and just leave the country. This secret conspiracy group included members like Hydrate, Wolfie, X-Bob, and Rainbow MP3. This group would also gain the attention of other countries in the world, such as members of an alliance between the German Empire, Austria-Hungary, and the Mexican Empire. You're probably wondering why in the world Mexico is in this alliance, considering the fact that Austria-Hungary hated them and had basically fought a war with them with their pink glitch. While that is true, you have to remember what happened earlier in this video with the war involving Mexico and the harsh treaty that followed it. And I'm sure you also remember how Poland used the leverage from the treaty to have Mexico help them in 2 wars against Finland, which ultimately resulted in a friendship between those 2 countries. Now after all of that, other countries such as Iberia, Austria-Hungary, and others recognized that their friend Poland was now chill with Mexico, which naturally brought them closer to Mexico as well. They also saw it to be more beneficial to be chill with Mexico rather than being against them, considering that Base Mech was actually pretty good PvP around the realm. Anyways, the Alliance supported a rebellion in the Albion Empire and even took steps to instigate a rebellion. This had effectively set a goal for the conspiracy group to accomplish, which was to essentially just start a civil war and take over the Albion Empire. Now the reason the Alliance supporting a potential rebellion in the Albion Empire was extremely important was because if they somehow got entangled in this whole rebellion thing, then this could cause a war even bigger than the one that we saw in World War II, and the only thing in between this happening and right now is some sort of spark. On February 9th, Hayes, Wolfie, and Hungry Turtle were online, and Hayes as well as Turtle were building, while Wolfie was making potions, most likely for the rebellion. Anyways, he needed to get some glass, so he took some of Hayes' building glass that he was using, but Hayes would catch him doing this, so he demanded him to give back the remaining glass. The relationship between Wolfie and Hayes was already really tense after the hacked in items incident, so when Wolfie refused to give the glass back, Hayes decided to attack Wolfie. Now Wolfie was much better than Hayes, so Hayes died. He then killed Hayes again and set fire to their base. Within a few minutes, much of the city was burned to the ground. The same city that had been in the making for almost 2 months was devastated just like that, and now the rebellion has officially begun. Hayes, not knowing what to do in this crisis, left the Discord server and quote-unquote quit, while more members began to join the rebellion such as Hydrate, Rainbow MP3, and X-Bob. The Albion was in complete anarchy, and the news spread around the world fast, with many countries sending their condolences. Even the German Empire, who had helped to instigate the rebellion in the first place, felt some sort of remorse because they thought it wouldn't be as severe as it was. Austria-Hungary and the Mexican Empire showed some signs of supporting the cause, but did not do anything yet. Later that day, Hayes returned to the server after realizing that something had to be done about his country. he was able to get the support of the Byzantine Empire, leading to them joining the war on the Albian side. We'll refer to the rebels as the Albian Rebel Alliance, who would end up occupying the rest of the Albian Empire while Hayes and Tiger were online. The United States was sitting in the background observing the situation unfold, and it was looking like they may support the Albion after being seen online inside the Albian Empire. They also would purchase some land in Texas so they can border the Mexican Empire, which signified a potential invasion because in the past, we've seen countries buying land next to a country so they can invade over a land border. It makes sense because the Mexican Empire had supported the rebels like I said earlier, and if the United States was going to help the rebels, then they would probably have to worry about Mexico as well. On the 10th, Bobler would be seen again in the Albion. While he was there, Wolfie would log on and Bobler would attack Wolfie. Wolfie would instantly combat log from the fight, and Bobler would inform Tiger and Hayes that he had just attacked a rebel and he now demanded them to set a spawn trap while Bobler went back to the United States to get supplies. While Bobler was gone, rebel intel notified Wolfie that Bobler was gone, so Wolfie logged on and fought Tiger and Hayes, and managed to win the fight despite it being a 2v1. By the time Bobler got back, Wolfie had already ran off. Hayes and Tiger re-geared, and with the help of Bobler, who now declared war on the Albian Rebel Alliance, recaptured the Albion. Later that day, Bobler and Tiger log on and realize that the rebels are in London again, with Mexico and Austria-Hungary, aka Basemac in power. Bobler and Tiger rush into the fight against the rebels, and sure enough, Basemac would leap into the fight in support of the rebels. Bobler also attacked Power because he thought he would help Basemac since they were aligned. The battle would be hard fought, but there would be no casualties since the rebels, Basemac, and Power would all run away from Bobler and Tiger. After the fight ended, Power said it was all misunderstanding and that Power did not mean to pose any threat. Bobler would allow Power to stay out of the war for now, but he would be declaring war on Mexico. Basemac would flee to Norway, but Bobler and Tiger would end up following him and killing him there. Basemac spawned in his capital city of Mexico City, so Bobler and Tiger decided to fight him again over there. By the time Bobler and Tiger arrived, Basemac was ready for another fight. Basemac would fight hard, but would be killed by Bobler in Mexico City. Bobler would leave to go back to the Albion to see if any rebels were hiding there, and at the same time, Tiger would occupy the entirety of the Mexican Empire, after sending Basemac to spawn so he could not defend his country. The next day, Bobler would log on to find that the rebels were blowing stuff up in the Albion. When Bobler ran over to them, he saw explosions happening in an area north of the capital and went over to see who was there, and it was Power. Bobler thinks he saw Power blowing up houses there, but Power claims that it wasn't him, and that it was Basemac who had already e-pearled away. Despite this, Bobler would attack Power and have a fight with him. Power would end up trying to run away, but he would die when he throws an e-pearl in the water. There would be no official declaration of war against Austria-Hungary, but they were now fighting for the rebellion side. Strangely enough, despite the fact that Austria-Hungary had been attacked, the German Empire did not back up Austria-Hungary even though they were aligned. Anyways, after the attack, Bobler and Hayes would be in the Albion trying to prevent any rebels from reoccupying their land. So while they were busy, Basemac along with the rebels would sneak into Washington DC and completely destroy the city. Bobler couldn't do anything about it because Basemac and the rebels had left quickly after they blew up DC and went to Tiger's Biglands farm and destroyed that too. The US, Albion, and Byzantine were now in a pretty bad situation considering they now had the most powerful countries in the world against them and they no longer had a pigland farm. On top of that, the rebel side of the war had some of the most skilled players on the realm, which would make it very hard for Bobler to outsmart them like he did with the UK in World War II. Bobler, Hayes, and Tiger would spend most of the day trying to get the rebels as well as Mexico and Austria-Hungary, who we'll just refer to as the Central Powers, to fight them, but they would rather hide away somewhere else. Which was fine because they had to deal with Hungry Turtle, who was supposedly loyal to the Albion, but had been caught sharing battle plans with the rebels, so Bobler murdered him. It was even worse for Hungry Turtle because the rebels thought he was loyal only to them, and not the Albion, so it made Hungry Turtle an enemy of both sides of the war. Later that day, Bobler and Hayes were patrolling the destroyed city of the Albion when they would notice that Hydrate, Power, Basemac, and Wolfie began to approach the Albion Empire. It seemed that they were trying to cross the English Channel and invade the Albion from there, so Bobler and Hayes would situate themselves on the coast of the English Channel to intercept any invasions. Unfortunately for Bobler, Hayes had to log off, leaving Bobler all alone against the world's best PvPers. The rebels and the Central Powers took advantage of the lone Bobler and crossed the channel and entered the Albion. Bobler retreated back to the destroyed base where the ground was flat and readied himself for a 4v1. The rebels and the Central Powers would follow Bobler there and they would attack him. The fight was extremely chaotic, with Basemac dying within the first minute of the fight and e-pearls flying everywhere. Bobler had taken fights like this before, but not against well-coordinated players, so he seemed to struggle in this fight even though he was able to pop Hydrate and Wolfie's totems of Undying. After doing a decent mark on the rebels and the Central Powers, Bobler's armor would begin to break, forcing him to retreat into the North Sea. Bobler ran to American land in Norway where he would be chased by Hydrate, but Hydrate could not take the 1v1 with Bobler, despite his armor being broken, resulting in Hydrate fleeing through another portal. Bobler technically didn't lose this fight, but he also didn't really get much out of it, considering the rebels now controlled the Albion once again and his armor was very damaged. Bobler called for Hayes to bring in more supplies in Norway when he could get on. This in turn led to Bobler and Hayes sort of just setting up camp in the high summits of Norway for the rest of the day. They might have been safe in Norway, but despite that, the rebels still controlled the Albion, and Bobler knew that he would not win the war if he could not come up with a plan. Hibernia, which is a puppet of the Albion, heard that the rebels controlled the entirety of the Albion, and decided to join the rebellion on the 12th. Hayes would try to stop this from happening, so he tried to confront Hughes, the leader of Hibernia, but Basemec would come in to help Hibernia and would force Hayes to combat log. However, Hayes does not claim it was a combat log. The rebels not only controlled the Albion, but they now controlled Hibernia. Good news would come to Bobler because the Rebel Alliance and the Central Powers all consisted of members across different time zones, making it difficult to fight during the weekdays, since if it was like 5 PM for one person, it'd be like 7 AM for the other. This gave Bobler a chance to sort of catch a break during the weekdays and to think of a plan. Unfortunately for him, there's nothing he could really do by himself along with Hayes and Tiger, who weren't very skilled at combat. The only way Bobler could win is if he found an ally to help the US, and more importantly, the Albion. The problem with that is that the world's most powerful countries were already fighting the war against him, and any remaining countries were all incapable to fight, but that won't stop anyone from trying. I hope you all remember California, who formed about a week earlier. While California had been silently recruiting a bunch of members and becoming stronger and stronger while this whole war was going on. California noticed what had been happening and realized that they could take advantage of this situation, so here's what they did. They wanted to expand their borders, but they didn't want to pay diamonds for unclaimed land, so they would have rather taken over land for free. So they went to the United States and told Bobler that California would be willing to fight alongside the United States in exchange for some land in Mexico after the war was over, as well as Texas, which was owned by the United States. That is where they kind of take advantage of the situation. Bobler didn't really like giving up land, but he was desperate, so he agreed to these terms. Besides, if he won the war, he could take back Texas if he really wanted to. The next few days of the war would be pretty inactive, like I had said earlier. The only encounters would be small confrontations in the Albion. On the 15th, California would officially join the war on America's side. Now, California had a lot of members, but they didn't have much armor, but Bobler did, so he supplied them gear and swords, as well as potions, golden apples, and ender pearls. On the 17th, the fights would start to pick up again. Basemec would be online in Mexico City all by himself, so Hayes took advantage of this and had a fight with him, which he would actually win, which is really impressive because Basemec is much better than him. Bobler feared that the rest of the rebels would log on to assist Basemec, so he would get California online to help fight. Now, Bobler didn't really know what to do with such a large army since this was his first time ever having to deal with so many people, so he would have California sit in the Albion and wait for rebels or Central Powers to attack, but they never really approached the Albion. Hayes took this as an opportunity to get revenge and grief Mexico City as well as Mexico's other cities. You see, the rebels and the Central Powers were already struggling against Bobler himself, and now that he had a whole army, they didn't even want to log on. On top of that, the rebels didn't really have anything to fight for at this point. I mean, even if they won the war, they would control a completely destroyed island that would be more work to repair compared to just building up another city or country. Mexico also did not have much to fight for because much of their cities had been grieved or completely destroyed. Then there was Austria-Hungary, who didn't even want to be in the war to begin with. So that's when Hydrate, Wolfie, Basemec, and Power would all come together and agree that there was nothing to fight for at this point. They would then go to Bobler and ask him if they could surrender, to which Bobler asked about the terms. All they asked of him was to let Austria-Hungary keep the Hungarian Raj, which was in India, so they could all move there and form the country of India. As for the rest of the land, they did not care what the Albion, the United States, or Byzantine, or California did to it. Bobler agreed to these terms and told them that they could keep India and that Bobler and his allies would decide what to make of the map afterwards. But first, Bobler wanted to meet in the German Colosseum to sign the peace deal. The rebels and the Central Powers were a little bit skeptical at first, but they agreed. So Bobler, representing the United States, Hayes, representing the Albion Empire, and Pee-wee, representing California, would all come together on one side of the Colosseum, and on the other side of the Colosseum, Power, representing Austria-Hungary, as well as Hydrate and Wolfie, representing the Rebel Alliance, would all come together in the middle. Basemec did not attend, but he would listen through the Discord call. Anyways, the delegates from both sides of the Colosseum would walk to the middle to agree on the terms of peace. And once in the middle, this is how it went.
Alright, Hydrate, do you accept
Where my flowers go?
Hydrate, do you accept the terms?
I guess.
Howard, do you accept the terms?
Yes, and here's a token to Mr. Layer.
Wolfie, do you accept the terms?
No, kill yourself.
Oh my god, Wolfie!
Alright.
I'm kidding.
Okay, now you
I
guys
accept
accept
them.
No, you guys accept us if we accept the terms.
Hey,
Okay,
do you accept the terms?
I do accept the terms.
Yeah.
Mr. Led, do you accept the terms?
Mr. Layer?
Yes, I accept the terms.
Oh, hey,
Bro, he sounds like Razor, what the fuck?
do you accept the terms?
Yes, I do.
Are you speaking for
What?
him?
He sounds
Stop.
exactly like Razor.
I do.
That is Razor.
That is Razor, you... Wait.
Oh my god.
Wait, Bobler?
It's
Yeah.
Razor the whole time.
Wait, are you Razor?
Oh my god.
Uh,
Oh my
yeah.
god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my. That's weird.
This meant that every war that Bobler has ever fought in, such as World War I, World War II, the Iraq War, and this war, was all fought by me on that alt account. I'd essentially convinced everybody in the server to believe I was just the German Empire and the owner of the server, but in reality, I had secretly been behind every single major war, and was the enemy of many people. For instance, Power saw me as a great ally on the surface, but in reality, I was his enemy that was right on his back porch. But do you know what else this means? Now that everyone knew that I was Bobler, I could take the land from this war to the German Empire, since I no longer had to worry about people being suspicious. First order of business was to split Austria-Hungary between the German Empire and the Albian, who actually became Romania once more after this war basically destroyed the entirety of the Albian beyond repair. The next thing the German Empire would do is take the entirety of the Italian peninsula. Now, although I revealed Bobler, I still wanted the US to have some land out of this. First, I would do my part in the agreement I made / Bobler made with California and give Texas and some of Mexico to California, as promised, and then I'd annex the rest of the Mexican Empire. The US would also take some overseas territories that Austria-Hungary owned in North America. Now I / Bobler would still do my part in the treaty and let the Indian Empire be born. The world map was completely different after this war, with the Mexican Empire, Austria-Hungary, and the Albian Empire all being completely erased off the map. Now you probably have a million questions racing through your head right now about Bobler, but what is important is why would I reveal that as Bobler? Well, you see, this whole meetup in the Colosseum wasn't necessarily done to sign peace. I mean, it was, but if I really just wanted to sign peace, I could have just done that in a Discord call or something. Instead, this meetup was sort of a farewell address. Bobler would be retiring. I stated that I'd grown tired of fighting wars since it had brought nothing but trouble to me, and I'd always felt really guilty about secretly fighting my friends. I would continue to be president of the United States, but would not do anything with my power. However, I'd be giving it back to Wooly if he decided to return at any point. Another question you probably have is why would I even find this account in the first place? My main reason is because I didn't want to face the real consequences of war on my main account since I had much to lose on that, while Bobler didn't really have much to lose but a set of armor. So I mean, that's it, right? The realm must be over since Bobler was basically the reason for every major war to become, well, major. And now that he's retired, like, there probably won't be any major wars in the future. However, that's simply not the case. There are too many unanswered questions about this new world order for this realm to just end here. How will the world function differently during post-Bobler's America? And now that all the world's best PvPers were all in the country of India, how will the country function with society? And what will happen with these entirely new characters in the rising nation of California? Thankfully, all of these questions will be answered in part 4 of the History of My Realm. Thank you for sticking until the end, and this has been History of My Realm, part 3. See ya.